Flourish Moms Train Them Up Week 5. This week, we're going to focus on discipline. Before I was a stay-at-home mom, I was a teacher. And I learned very quickly that one of the most important components to a great classroom was classroom management. If my students did not respect me, then good luck. I was not going to accomplish much in a day. The truth was that how well they understood the concepts and achieved good results was directly correlated to how well I managed the classroom. I've learned that as a mom, the same ingredients that helped my classroom run smoothly actually help my home run smoothly too. A home environment that has order and stability, where kids are disciplined and taught to honor and respect their parents, and the environment is somewhat organized, is going to be much more conducive to kids growing and learning and thriving than one that is chaotic, where kids are allowed to rule the roost. What's our overall goal of discipline? To train up our kids in the way that they should go. It's not just about behavior modification. It's about pointing our kids' hearts towards Jesus. My desire as a mom is to raise kids to respect those in authority as they respect the authority of Christ in their lives. To teach them what it looks like to behave in a way that pleases the heart of God. It goes back to their identity in Christ. As their parents, we're to instill in them the belief that they are sons and daughters of God, and that their ultimate goal in life is to live in such a way that pleases Jesus. And if pleasing God in the way that they behave brings pleasure and delight to his heart, it also will bring delight to our heart, and it keeps us from being quite so embarrassed by our kids' behavior. It's a win all the way around. What does the Bible say about discipline? The Bible actually has a lot to say about discipline, just as we've seen throughout this series and all the topics we've covered. God's word is so relevant. There's a selection of verses in Hebrews chapter 5 that point out several truths we should note about discipline. It's verses 5 through 11, and they state, "My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as his son. Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you are not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, then you are not legitimate, not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we have all had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father of spirits and live? They disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it." There are 4 truths we can pull out of these verses about discipline. One is that discipline is a language of love. It says that God shows us his love for us by disciplining us. Secondly, the fruit of discipline is a harvest of righteousness and peace for our kids. As our kids are disciplined, they learn what it looks like to live a righteous life. And the fruit of that righteous life is peace, because they carry that aspect of discipline, the respect for authority from your home and outside of your home to their future work environment, to their classroom, to their church leaders, and it brings peace into their lives. Thirdly, it teaches our kids to respect us. It says that human fathers discipline their kids and they respect them for it. Your kids will respect you for disciplining them. Maybe not in the moment, but as they get older and they look back, they will appreciate that you parented them intentionally. And fourthly, it's good for our kids, even though it may not feel good at the time. There are also several proverbs that speak to the importance of discipline. One is Proverbs 19:18. It says, "Discipline your children, for in that there is hope. Do not be a willing party to their death." And I know that sounds really intense, but I believe that this verse is talking about spiritual death, because as we just noted, the fruit of discipline is righteousness. It teaches our kids how to live a righteous life. If we're not disciplining them, then they're not learning how to live a righteous life, and their walk with Jesus will struggle, will suffer. Proverbs 22:15, "Folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline will drive it far away." As we know, we are born into sin, but we're born into foolishness. We have to learn wisdom as we go. And as we discipline our kids, we are teaching them what is wise and what is unwise, what decisions are wise. Proverbs 23:13. Do not withhold discipline from a child. If you punish them with the rod, they will not die. I believe this verse is pointing us back to the truth that discipline will not harm our kids. It is for their good. And we're not referring, of course, to abusive forms of discipline where we are disciplining out of anger and frustration. You know, we're not disciplining within the boundaries of how God would intend for our discipline strategies to be, where we're disciplining in love, where we are controlling ourselves and we're walking them through this process of talking through the consequences, talking about the punishment rather than it being harsh and cruel. My favorite proverb about discipline is Proverbs 29:17. It says, discipline your children and they will give you peace. They will bring you the delights you desire. I learned the truth of this proverb when my daughter was in preschool. I had two little babies and her that I was lugging around at the grocery store. Brother was off in school. And somehow, inevitably, in the middle of any grocery shopping trip, she seemed to be like, turning on me. And this rebellion just built and fired up and came out from inside of her. And she turned into this little preschool monster running around the store. I felt like the beginning of our trips, she was pretty good about holding onto my cart, not touching things, but it all went out the window every single time. And it was leading to frustration, embarrassment, exhaustion. I was worn out. And after one such trip where I had been reminding her over and over again, we keep our hands on the cart, we walk with mom, we look with our eyes, not with our hands, all the little things. And she was doing the complete opposite. I sat down with her. I said, do you love Jesus? And she said, yes. So, well, do you think that your behavior is showing others in the store that you love Jesus when you disobey mama like that? No. Okay, well, if we go back to the store and you do obey mama, and in that way you're showing people that you love Jesus, do you think it will make your heart happy and mama's heart happy? Yes. All right, well, let's give it a try. So the next time we went to the store, she tried so hard to make Jesus's heart happy and show everybody in the store that she loved Jesus. And I remember leaving the store, we got in the car, and she said, Mama, I showed everybody Jesus today. And I said, yes, you did, baby girl. I'm so proud of you. And I was able to delight in her behavior. She made my heart happy in honoring me and in honoring God. And she got it. She understood that her behavior was about a lot more than just obeying, following all my rules. It was about pleasing God. Now that we've established why discipline is important, let's turn our focus to how we can practically implement discipline in our home. I want to look back at that model of classroom management and the ingredients for an organized classroom, for a great, thriving classroom. They're the same ingredients that we can put in place in our home to manage our homes well. The first is rules and consequences. When it comes to setting rules in our home, this goes back to our conversation about our family values and vision statement. We tend to formulate our rules based on what we value. For example, in our home, we are Hispanic. My husband was born in Nicaragua. His parents are definitely full-blooded Nicaragüense, and they value being respected as elders. So we have taught our kids when they see their grandparents who live right by us, so they do see them on a daily basis, that they need to stop and kiss them, hug them, acknowledge them, show them that respect. If they break that rule and they walk right by them and they do not show that value in respecting their authority, then of course they're going to get an earful. If they've come in the house, they're going to be sent right back to go pay their respects and their honor toward them. And their grandfather, their abuelo, is very quick to say, hello, I'm here. You didn't acknowledge me. He reminds them, you need to show me that respect. It's important that consequences for rules broken are logical. For example, another rule that we have in our home, just because it's something that drives me nuts, is that they put their backpacks away when they get home from school. So if repetitively they're leaving it lying around on the floor, and when you have 4 backpacks, 4 pairs of shoes, 4 lunch boxes everywhere, it's a lot of stuff and it's a mess. So we need to have some order around our house. So I would initially remind them. If I've reminded them several times and they're still disobeying me, then they're going to be punished because they're not obeying their mom. So the logical consequence for the choice to disobey me would be, well, you don't get to go outside and play today, because they always have to put their things away before they can go outside. So logically, if you didn't put your things away and you're disobeying me, then you don't get to go outside. It's a logical consequence rather than, well, you don't get to go anywhere for the next 5 days. That wouldn't necessarily make sense for the rule that was broken. So it's always good to think logically when you're giving consequences to your kids. When they're punishing them, punish them in a way that makes sense and follow through. Make sure you're following through. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Procedures, policies, and systems. This is the second ingredient to a well-managed home and classroom. As a mom, we get to put procedures and systems in place that help our homes run smoothly. This looks like routines, and you're probably already doing this. A wake-up routine in the morning if you have kids in school. What procedures do they need to follow in the morning to get out the door? Have you set those clearly for them? What procedures do they need to follow to get ready for bed at night before they go to sleep? What procedures do they need to follow when they get home from school? That's one that I intentionally set at the beginning of every school year. I remind all of them, okay, when you get home from school tomorrow, the first day of school, what are you going to do with your backpacks? What are you going to do with your shoes? What are you going to do with your lunch boxes? Because once again, that's something that it's just big to me to not be tripping over stuff all afternoon. So I remind them of the procedures. We talk it through. It's intentionality once again. Bedtime, sleep routines all fall under procedures as well. So when your kids are little, what bedtime routines are you putting in place to help them get ready for bed? Setting those routines builds structure into your home. It builds a healthy rhythm into your kids' lives and creates stability and order. Chores also fall under systems. These are systems we put in place that help our homes run smoothly, and it's important that our kids are helping to bear the load in our homes. Galatians 6:4 says each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else. For each one should carry their own load. Our kids need to know what it's like to help carry the load in our home. Thirdly, organization is another key element to managing our homes well. We're not talking about perfection here, but we are talking about living in an environment that's not cluttered all the time. One where we're picking up at the end of the day. We're creating, once again, that sense of order. A 2010 study found that women who described their living spaces as disorganized tended to have generally higher levels of the stress hormone cortisol. Meanwhile, those who characterized their homes as being restful and restorative were not only less stressed than their cluttered counterparts, but also reported less sad feelings as the day went on, according to the Mayo Clinic. So how cluttered your home does affect your mental health. It affects your soul. It is good for your soul to live in an environment that is organized, that is picked up, that is not full of clutter. Fourthly, student engagement. And I believe this falls under two categories. One, the aspect of them physically being engaged in the classroom, in the home. And in this case, your kids being engaged in your home may look like what I just mentioned, chores, being a part of keeping the home environment running smoothly, following those procedures. That is engagement. But the other side of this, I believe, is the aspect of your kids having a desire to be in the home, wanting to be engaged in home life and not wanting to disengage and always be somewhere else. Is your home an environment where your kids love to be? When they talk about home, would they say, oh, there's no place like home? Or would they say, there's no place like my home? What perspective do your kids have about their home? And I understand when you have teenagers, college-age kids, they're coming, going all the time, and it does feel like they would much rather be somewhere else. But at the end of the day, ultimately, where would they rather lay their heads than anywhere else? We would hope that our kids would prefer to lay their head on their pillow, in their room, in their home, than anywhere else. That we would have created an environment for them to feel at peace, one that is a sanctuary for them to come home to every day. Fifthly and lastly, consistency. As we know, consistency is key in discipline. Doing the same thing over and over again, reminding them over and over and over again, correcting them when they break that rule, and disciplining them, punishing them over and over and over again until they understand the right way to do it. They understand that that's wrong and it's not going to fly here. As you know, kids learn through repetition. If you've ever read a book to your child that they loved, you, I'm sure, found yourself reading it over and over and over again until you've memorized it and don't even need to read the words anymore. You know, when they fixate on a movie, they watch it over and over and over again, and you have memorized the words to that movie. They learn well through repetition. And I know this can feel frustrating at times, like, didn't I just tell you? But we need to give our kids a little grace and remind ourselves, yes, we all need reminders sometimes. It does mean sometimes that the consequences need to get a little bit more severe so they learn that this behavior is not going to work. If the consequence isn't working, obviously we need to rethink, okay, what consequence needs to be put in place here for them to really understand this isn't right? In my house, the number one consequence that my kids really don't like is writing lines. They would rather be sent to their room, get a spanking, miss out on something really fun than have to sit and write lines. I find a Bible verse that applies to the behavior, the misbehavior. So if they've lied, we find a Bible verse about lying, about honesty, and they have to write it. But the cool thing is they memorize God's word. And then I always tell them, you have to come to me and recite that verse to me before you can move back on. So you have to write the lines and then come tell me the verse with the reference. And it's pretty fun because they can still quote the verses that they've written. Several of them can, so it works. As we seek to train up our kids, teaching them how to honor and respect, how to be responsible contributors in our home, it's just super important to helping them grow and thrive and flourish in all areas of life. It begins at the home and it flows out of the home. As Proverbs 29:17 said, we all desire to delight in our kids and in their behavior. Take a step today to better manage your home. It's one way that you can show your kids love. And we all know for sure that we can always use a little bit more peace in our lives, and so can our kids. Come on, mama coaches, you've got this.